Hi everyone, and welcome back to National Graduate Week 2022. I'm Eloise from Career Map, and it's really good to see so many of you on this session today with the European Space Agency about how to launch your career in space, which is one of the coolest introductions I think I've seen. And I'm really excited to be introducing you to Lucy van der Tas, who's going to talk you through all of the opportunities and give you some advice and tips. Before we do that, there will be a quick video that will just give you a brief introduction, and then we'll be handing over to Lucy to start the presentation. We also have Mimi joining in the chat, so from the European Space Agency. She'll be helping to answer your questions. So if you do want to drop them in the chat as you go, just whenever questions come into your mind, put them in the chat. You can also use the Q&A function, which is just to the right of the chat if you want to, or the chat is fine as well. And if you can see at the top of the chat, there's a pinned link. I'll be dropping that in the actual chat as well, just so you have it in both places. But that is where you can go to find more information. Other than that, just to let you know, as always, it will be recorded. So if you want to come back to this recording to find any extra tips or details or take notes, you'll have the recording, and we'll be sending out the links as well afterwards. If you have any technical issues, if you can't hear us, can't see us, drop that in the chat and I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Other than that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to begin this presentation, which will start with a video and then we'll hand over.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all there. Nice to see a lot of people who are interested today. So my name is Lucy van der Tas, and I'm Head of Talent Acquisition at the European Space Agency. So what is my job? It's a very special title. I think I did not think it up myself, by the way. But basically my job is about outreach and sharing what ESA is to potential candidates in the hope that you will think that ESA is an interesting employer for you for the future. So I'm going to take you through some of the various programs. I will tell you a little bit about ESA, and then we'll be talking about the entry-level programs and how to apply. And then at the end, there'll be some hints and tips about application forms and how to apply. So let's get started. So what is ESA? It's a nice word to say that we're Europe's gateway to space, but we are the European Space Agency. We're quite unique in terms of space agencies. We are the only truly international space agency. As you can see there, we have 22 member states. We also have 4 associate members, and we have a cooperating state, which is Canada. So a lot of people mix us up with the EU, but we're not the EU. We work with the EU. They support some of our programs. Think of Galileo, think of Copernicus. These are programs that we work together with the EU, but we are in fact a different organization, and the United Kingdom is a member of ESA. We're also unique in terms of the fact we're the only space agency which exists for exclusively peaceful purposes. We have no military arm. And in that, we're quite unusual. And we're also the only space agency which works across all the applications domains. So from the launchers through to research and technology, through to human space flight, telecommunications, you name it, we're present. And I'll talk to you a little bit later about where we are located. You can see that in the slide. And then we have a pretty substantial budget. It's nearly 7 billion euros a year. That equates to 12 euros per European per year. We get the money from our member states. But what is very interesting is 85% of that money is ploughed back into the European space industry to help them grow and develop and stay at the cutting edge. We do not actually manufacture anything at ESA ourselves, but we oversee industry who does the manufacturing of the satellites and the launches on our behalf. And as I said, we're active across every area of the space sector. And you can see we've got quite a substantial track record in the number of satellites that we've developed and tested. We came into being in 1975, and we've had more than 220 launches. And our rocket, Ariane, is one of the most accurate rockets out there on the market today. And you may remember a Christmas Day launch, Christmas Day 2021, when the Webb telescope, which is a joint cooperation between NASA, ESA, and the Canadian Space Agency, was launched by Ariane. And Ariane was so accurate that with a bit of luck, she's managed to save some propulsion so that the overall lifespan of the Webb telescope has been expanded. Now, I see some questions popping into the chat now. I will take the quick yes/no ones now, but the rest I'll take right at the end. So Harrison, the UK leaving the EU has no impact on opportunities for working at ESA because the United Kingdom is still a full member state of ESA. So I'll come back to the other questions when we move through the slides, because I have a number to talk about the various programs and things that we do. So where are we located? This is an overview of our establishments. So they're all based in Europe. And in fact, even our spaceport, which is based in French Guiana, is actually, technically speaking and politically speaking, still in Europe, because French Guiana is a full part of the French Republic. And we launch from Guyana. That gives us the independence for a European launcher. And it launches out across the ocean, so that if in the sad case that something goes wrong, it will happen over sea. But it also launches together with the way that the Earth moves. So the Earth is moving underneath underneath the rocket as it moves. So that shortens the duration to get out into space. And it's near the equator, which is much closer to space as well. Now, the other establishments all around Europe, but the very biggest one is actually the European Space Research and Technology Centre in Noordwijk, the Netherlands. That's where I am located. And that's where nearly 60% of our workforce is located. So if you are going to be applying for an entry-level position in engineering or in science, you're most likely to end up at ESTEC in the Netherlands. Our headquarters is based in Paris. And we do have a centre, as you can see, in Harwell, which is near Oxford. It's a relatively small centre. There's about 100 people working there. And they work on telecommunications primarily, but the climate monitoring office is there too. ESA astronauts. We can't talk about ESA without talking about astronauts. So we have an astronaut class, the latest one, which is still very active, of 7 people. And in fact, we have had 2 recent launches and 2 recent missions. Matthias Maurer came back from the International Space Station in May, at the beginning of May. And Samantha Cristoforetti has in fact just returned last week from the International Space Station, where she was at the end of her mission. She was the first European woman to command the International Space Station. So this is a pretty big achievement. She's also the second longest astronaut, female astronaut in terms of time spent in space, and I think she's up there pretty much with number 2 in terms of spacewalks. And we are currently selecting the next class of ESA astronauts. The vacancy was published in March 2021, and they go for an extremely rigorous selection process. It lasts about 18 months. So we're in the closing stages. And in fact, the new astronauts will be announced on the 23rd of November at our Council of Ministers in Paris. So we're quite excited about that, because it won't be long now before we know who will be our next class. And given that we had 23,000 applications and we've whittled it down to about 20 people, this is quite an exciting moment for us. Before I go on to talking about the entry-level programs, I'd just like to touch on our ESA Academy. So the ESA Academy offers a wide range of training courses and also hands-on space-related activities to students. So typically anybody, bachelor's, master's or PhD. What is important to bear in mind is that in order to be able to participate in one of the Academy's programs, and this applies also to all positions at ESA, you need to be a citizen of one of our member states or one of our associate or cooperating member states. You'll see in each of the slides that we given the distribution of the countries who participate in the various programs. One thing that I found extremely interesting, I was privileged to attend the closing day, the final ceremony of the first ESA CubeSat Summer School, which ended on the 2nd of September. It was 4 weeks of hands-on courses, learning from the experts. It was a fascinating program for 30 students. And that was the culminating day when they received their certificates. And it was great to see how they had really brought together and become a class of students who will go forward, and I think they will have networks there for the rest of their lives. It was a fascinating experience, and it was a privilege to have been part of it. And all the ESA Academy programs are sponsored. So you may need to, if you participate, you may need to find funding for your travel, but as far as the actual program is concerned, it is sponsored by ESA. So now I'd like to touch on our entry-level and research programs. And as you can see, we have 6 of them. Each of these programs targets a specific segment of the student population. If you can imagine that we receive tens of thousands of applications for the programs in total each year, we need to find a way to manage these applications in a way that people get an answer quickly. And also, we find that this gives a clarity and a structure to the people who are applying. They know where they stand, they know which program they're eligible for, and they know where to apply. And again, having said, as I said a few minutes ago, a defining factor is the nationality or the citizenship of one of our member states. So let's take a look at the student internships. So we're talking here about people in the last years of a master's degree, generally speaking. Bachelor's candidates can apply, but we do give priority to master's students. The master is the minimum qualification to work at ESA, and that the work sort of tends to start at that level. What I think is really important to remember here, we say, when do the opportunities open? Between September and November. We're planning to go online in November this year. So watch the website, keep an eye open. What you can also do on our jobs website, so you have on the pinned above is the careers website, which gives all the information about all the various programs, plus a link to the applications website, which is jobs.esa.int. And on that website, you can set up an alert, which means that the system will automatically inform you if a vacancy of interest to you is published. And I would certainly do that if you are interested. And as I said, student internship opportunities for 2023 will go online in November for 1 month only. Then the Young Graduate Trainee Programme. This is a 1-year contract. When you apply, you must be a student in your final year of master's or have just graduated. It is to give people a first year or 2 of experience. Most people are with us for 1 year, but we can offer a second. And we will be opening the opportunities in February. The selection process then takes place during March, April, May, June, and most of the young graduates start in September or October. So you could conceivably become a student intern, do your internship at the first half of 2023, while an application as a young graduate trainee is ongoing, and then start with us in the September or October after your graduation. What I would like to highlight from this particular slide, this was the image that we used for last year's program, Dream, Dare, Do. A lot of people see ESA as perhaps potentially being beyond their reach. And we feel that this was an excellent motto to say, give it a go. If you don't do it yourself, then you have basically deselected yourself. So we would certainly encourage anybody who is interested to give it a go. Obviously, look out a relevant vacancy. There will be just over 100 going online, and that applies to the students' internships as well. So you'll need to filter and take a look at the ones that are most relevant. But certainly take a look and see, because you never know, you might find something that's there for you. The National Trainee Programme, this is a programme which we have set up with certain of our member states, in most cases new member states who are still building up their national space industry. As you can see, we have 5 active programs at the moment with Belgium, Estonia, Hungary, Luxembourg and Portugal. We have a couple more in the making. So for those of you with British nationality, this is less relevant to you, but if you happen to have the nationality of one of these 5 countries, then this could be very interesting. Now, this is a big difference with the other programs that I've just been talking about. For the other programs, you come onto the ESA workforce. Here, you are recruited and by the National Space Agency, and you become a member of their workforce, but you are then seconded to one of the ESA establishments, and it's usually for 1 year. With the second year, in this case, the second year is more common than with the young graduate traineeships, and it gives people a first experience. It's a similar target audience to that of the young graduate trainee program, but it's an interesting program insofar as it's a secondment to ESA, and that is the big difference between the National Trainee Programme and the Young Graduate Trainee Programme. And I believe there was a question about that in the chat earlier. Yes, Fatima, I hope that's answered your question. So the Research Fellowship Programme, this targets PhDs, so postdocs, and you come to ESA for 2 years, and there is a possibility of a 3rd year. Most of the research fellows stay with us for a 3rd year. And again, the requirement is a recently attained doctorate within the last 5 years, and you come to do research work with ESA. The Space Science Research Fellowship Programme goes online in August and September, and it's targeting, they have 8 to 10 positions specifically targeting people in the space sciences. The other research fellows are published throughout the year on an ongoing basis as the need arises. Then moving on to the Junior Professional Programme, which was a brand new programme which we launched in 2021 for the very first time. It's a 3-year contract, and the idea is that the person becomes a member of ESA's workforce on a permanent position at the end of it. Again, you must have a master and you must have 2 to 3 years of experience. Because we are still working with the first cohort, and a big part of the Junior Professional Programme is a customized and individualized training program, because we really want to maximize the chances of these people becoming permanent ESA employees at the end of it. The next publication is currently foreseen for November 2024, so that we will have 1 class going through for 3 years, and then we will open up for the next one. We currently have 30 people as junior professionals. Who knows what the future will bring, whether the member states will agree to us expanding that or not. A lot of what we do depends on the member states and the green light from them. ESA co-funded research, this is something a bit different. Here, people do not get a contract with ESA. We place a contract with a university. And this means that you are already signed up with the university either to do your PhD or your postdoc. And through your university, you would submit a proposal to ESA, to a different website. So this is important. And then if the idea is accepted, ESA places a contract with the university and co-funds up to 50% or to 90,000 euros. What is also very interesting, you get access to the ESA laboratories and the technical support, and also the networking opportunities. So for people who are PhDs or postdocs, this can be extremely interesting. And this is the only program here where we do not limit it to member state nationals. So you do not need to have the citizenship of one of our member states in order to benefit from the ESA co-funding for the research. Now, that concludes on the programs, and I'd just like to share a few keywords with you. This visual was put together on the basis of inputs from a group of young professionals, so young graduates, interns, research fellows, and we asked them, how would you describe ESA? And you can see all the words there, but I'd just like to highlight a couple which make ESA for me. So I would go for passion, first of all. There's an awful lot of very, very passionate people working at ESA today. Learning and sharing is another one. Those passionate people are also passionate about sharing so that other people can learn from them. And curiosity is another word that I think that a curiosity is what differentiates us people. We have long careers at ESA. People stay for many, many years. And that curiosity is what keeps you motivated and passionate throughout your full career. And at the end of the day, and you'll see it's there twice, in fact, it's more than twice, is the word fun. It appears quite largely to the left-hand side and in small letters elsewhere. We also get a lot of fun out of our time at work. So I hope that these words appeal to you too. Then I would like to just cover the various disciplines which we have at ESA. So here we have the more, I suppose you could say, traditional engineering disciplines for the supporting of the satellites, the manufacture of the satellites, but we also do an awful lot of research and development. And there we need people at the cutting edge of their disciplines, or are open to the cutting edge, or who are curious. I'm coming back to this curiosity I mentioned a few minutes ago. It's so important in order for the role of ESA, which is to determine R&D roadmaps together with European industry, academia, and the national space centres, but for the coming years. And that is extremely important. But we also have the scientific disciplines are represented. So you'll see the planetary and space science disciplines, which I referred to in terms of the research fellowship, but we also have people in permanent positions. And the life and material sciences, life sciences in particular, is the supporting in the International Space Station for human life in space. And applied mathematics is an interesting discipline because that is very often used in flight dynamics and orbiting. Business and administration, we mustn't forget those roles. A lot of people who are studying human resources or finance or law don't realize that the European Space Agency could be somewhere where you could work. I mean, I have a background in human resources. I'm not an engineer. And I've been with ESA for many years. And I think there is a place for all of these roles as well. And in view of the fact that we do not manufacture anything ourselves, we work together with companies in European space industry. There's a lot of procurement going on, and therefore we do need lawyers. So we have the contracts and the procurement. We also have international public law, but we also have lawyers working in human resources as well. So this is just a selection of the areas which are not engineering or science, but which are also represented at ESA. So a few words about what we are looking for. I've already talked about curiosity, professional curiosity. It's so important. It's what drives the passion. It's what drives the learning. It's what drives your evolution. The expertise, especially when you're at the start of your career, will come. That will come as a result of the curiosity. I've mentioned already that the master's is a minimum requirement, PhD for some roles as well. The passion for space, well, a lot of people come to us with the passion for space, but if you don't have it when you start at ESA, you're quite likely to get it. I didn't have it when I started at ESA, not coming from human resources, but I've certainly got it. And I have to say that one of the things that really sticks with me is each time we have a successful launch, I still get a lump in my throat thinking of all those years of work that have gone into it to make it success from all those concerned. The relevant experience, if you're moving into ESA at the start of your career, obviously you would still need to build that up, but I'll come in a moment to how you can highlight this in your application. Team spirit, super important. We are a collection of teams, and that team spirit is very important. Language skills and a multicultural attitude. I would say that the multicultural attitude is the most important. You will be working with a number of different people from different countries, different nationalities, different cultures. This brings a lot to the environment. It's fascinating. The language skills, English is the working language at ESA, so you do need to be able to speak good English. I'm assuming that most of you do speak good English. But if you wanted to learn another language while you're at ESA, you would have that opportunity to do so. And then what we offer, inspiring projects and activities. I think that's a given, and I can talk a little bit more about that if you like. Learning and development, I talked about the learning, and there is formal learning in training courses. There's also informal learning in the sharing with the experts who are all too keen to share their knowledge. The multicultural environment I touched on. We do have very competitive and attractive salary conditions, also flexible working arrangements. And to come back to the fun I mentioned from that word collection, we have a lot of social, sports and cultural programs ongoing that people do in their private time when they're off work. You get to know your colleagues in a different way if you're also socializing with them. But it's not mandatory, of course. It's just there if you would like. And I did not mention diversity inclusiveness a few slides ago because we have a dedicated slide here. So we are working on achieving diversity within the workforce. We are at about 27, 28% women, which for an organization of which is primarily engineering and science is not bad. I say not bad because we're above the space industry average, but we're not much above the space industry average, and there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're working on it. We're also working on other forms of diversity. We're working on rejuvenating, so representing all the various different generations in ESA, and of course, the disabilities and all the other forms of diversity that you can think about. We work on an inclusive working environment. I have to say that I really genuinely have had the feeling throughout my career that once I came to work, I was Lucy, and I was looked at as Lucy, irrespective of any other attributes that I have, such as being a woman or anything else. And that I have really appreciated about working at ESA. I've talked a lot about the gender. The nationality representation is a given at ESA because of the different countries, and it's in our DNA. This principle of fair representation, it's been with us ever since we started as an organization. And the family-friendly environment, we have these flexible working practices, we have flexi-time, teleworking, and also part-time schemes. Not all of them are open to the entry-level programs because you have a limited amount of time at ESA, but certainly the flexi-time and the teleworking is there for you as well. So the ESA selection process. The ESA selection process you see here is for the young graduates, the research fellows, and the permanent positions. So the step one is to apply or to set up an alert if you don't see the vacancy that you're looking for at the time. Then once you've applied, we will do a first pre-screening on the basis of your application form. We ask for a motivation letter. So take the opportunity to make sure that your motivation letter is a true motivation letter. I recently did a recruitment and I saw a lot of standard boilerplate templates, and I see that as a missed opportunity. There's a second pre-screening, which will be either an online discussion with one or two people or an asynchronous video interview. Now, what is an asynchronous video interview? It means it's a video interview. I think that's obvious. But it's a recorded video interview. So you're given some questions by the system, which you have to answer within a pre-allocated time. And a lot of people find this quite off-putting. And I do understand that, but we've found it a very effective way to be able to pre-select in this pre-screening round a much wider selection of people if we were to proceed straight away to the formal interview. And I remember a candidate giving me a tip once. He said, I went on to LinkedIn and I found the profile of the person who was the recruiting manager for this position. And I printed out their photograph and I stuck it up to next to my camera, and I pretended I was talking to that person. And that can make the experience more personal for you. Step 4 is the final panel interview, and that's when the recruitment decision is made. The panel will be for a permanent position between 4 and 6 people. For a young graduate or a research fellow position, it's typically 2 or 3. So it's a little bit like a master's thesis defense. So bear this in mind. This is the typical way that ESA recruits, and the interview will last around about an hour. And that's so it's important to be well prepared for it. Step 5 is the basic screening and reference checks. This is done primarily for the permanent positions, and then we send out the ESA offer. Because we are an international organization, we have our own medical insurance system. And for that reason, there is a physical carried out before you start working with us. It does not apply to the interns, but it does apply to the young graduates, research fellows, and permanent positions. And it's also to make sure that you are fit for work. And then step 7 is the take-up duty, is the day that you actually start working with us. And there is always a certain amount of discussion that can be had about that. We take notice periods into account. We take into account other obligations that somebody may have. So don't be afraid that when you get the offer and it gives a date which doesn't quite fit with your other commitments, open up the discussion and we can usually come to a compromise. I just wanted to say a few words now about writing a good CV and motivation letter. As far as the CV is concerned, what I would say is preparation is critical. You need to prepare about the organization. You need to prepare about the vacancy. Tailor the CV so that you make sure that you have all your relevant information in there. I recently had somebody ask me why they weren't selected for a position in a specific domain. Turned out that they hadn't mentioned that they had experience in that domain. They did not have much, so they didn't think it was relevant. But you do need to make sure that you have all the information in there for the line manager to make a good, solid recruiting decision, because this is all the information that they will have. So what you give them is what they will decide whether or not to recruit you on, or at least to take you to the next stage. Your CV should typically be about 2 pages, I would say, certainly at the start of your career. If you can make it 1, that's fine. But again, if you need to run over a little bit, that's not a problem if you want to make sure that you do cover things. But preparation and structure, I think structure is also really important. Put yourself in the shoes of the recruiting manager. Think about what you would need to know in order to decide whether or not this candidate was suitable to be taken further in the selection process. And again, think about formatting, layout, make it easy to read. Don't make it too dense. Don't go all out to fit it onto one page and have font size 9 or 10. Yes, we can increase it on the viewer when we're reviewing online, but it still makes it very, very dense and very packed. So make allowances for the line manager's eyes. And then the motivation letter, 1 page maximum. Coming back to what I said previously, it is really important. It's a very important element to the process, and it is read and reviewed by the recruiting managers and by HR when making the decision whether or not to take an application to the next stage. So take the most of this opportunity. Highlight something about yourself which you might not be able to have fitted into the CV. The CV is, if you like, it's a skeleton. The motivation letter is where you can put in a little bit of flesh on it, if you forgive the allusion. And you can build out yourself. This is your opportunity to show what is unique about you. And it's an important opportunity which I strongly recommend you take. And that ends the presentation. So we have the 2 websites. The first one, which is stuck to the top of the screen there, the careers website, which gives all the information and more about what I have been talking about, and then the jobs.esa.int in order to apply. Now, let me see. I see that we've got a lot of questions here. So I think I have answered a lot of them. Okay, very quickly, Anthony, what type of working environment is at ESA? Casual or formal? It depends on your job, quite frankly. The engineers are very casual. If you work in law, you're a bit more formal. And you'll see the suits for the lawyers, but you'll see the engineers in jeans and T-shirts. So maybe for your first day, and certainly for the interview, err on the side of caution. It's better to be too formal than not formal enough, because otherwise people might not think that you're serious about the job at ESA, that you're not sufficiently motivated. So certainly for the interview, I would recommend semi-formal. And but once you get there and you see ESA, then it depends very much on the team you're working with. Esme asking about summer internships or industrial placement year schemes. No, we don't offer summer internships or industrial placement year schemes. We have the student internships. They are between 3 and 6 months throughout the year, anytime between February and October. The thing is that we get about 8,000 to 9,000 applications for the 100 places. So it's not possible for us to meet every single need. We have to meet the need of the majority, or at least try to meet the need of the majority. And that's why we have quite a structured approach to what we offer in terms of programs. Another question from Esme, do I know when the next class of astronauts will be recruited? No, I don't. We're still in the middle of this one. Well, not in the middle, we're coming to the closing stages, but it's been a long, hard haul. It's been very thorough exercise. There is talk that the next class might be in 4 to 5 years. I personally think it's more likely in 10. The last one was 10 years ago. I think that we will probably continue in increments of 10. But at the end of the day, anything can happen. It's a political decision. And if the member states say they want to have another class of astronauts in 4 years' time, then that may very well happen then. So I cannot give a definitive answer. Now, there are a number of questions which I am jumping over. They are more technical questions. Some of them are within my domain, some are not. But I'm focusing now very much on the questions I see in the chat about the programs. So what would be some challenges that I would need to overcome as an ESA graduate? From Saul, I think, Saul, the biggest challenge would be standing out among the thousands of applications that we receive. That would be the first challenge. And I hope that I've given some hints and tips when I was talking about the application and the CV that will help you stand out at the starting point. Chiara, is there anywhere where I can register my interest for these programs? Given the number of applications we receive, we need to receive an application for a vacancy. And the only way to do that is to go to jobs.esa.int and apply for an open vacancy. You can apply for or register for an alert whereby the system will automatically inform you of a vacancy of interest. Neve, what do you like best about working at ESA? I think I answered that. I hope you got the answer. What degree class, from Anthony, what degree class do you need for this engineering program, and does it need to be credited by ICE or ITE? Master, and it needs to be an academically recognized master. Obviously, you don't need a master if you're applying for an internship, but you need to be studying towards a master. ICRA, the company mission statement is the exploration and development of space for exclusively peaceful purposes. So I think that in a nutshell is the mission statement. It gets a bit bigger. We're also very much looking at developing European space industry, keeping it at the forefront, keeping Europe competitive and maintaining Europe's access to space. That's very important. Marine biologists employed at ESA. Gareth, I'm not sure we do have any marine biologists working at ESA, but I'm pretty sure we will be working alongside them. Ariane, is this recorded? Yes. Sudhir, I have done my master's in the academic year 2021 and the degree was awarded in 2022. Yes, you are still eligible for the YGT in February. We have a little bit of leeway. So even if your degree was awarded in 2021, you could still apply for 2023. But that would probably be the limit. Julia, what would you recommend to someone who's just graduated from the bachelor who's very passionate to work for ESA? My recommendation would be to get a master. We're quite strict and we receive so many thousands of applications that we do have to differentiate, and this is one of the ways to differentiate. So I would definitely encourage you to go on and get your master if you can. I did my master mid-career and I can tell you it's a challenge to juggle everything. So if you can get it now, definitely do so. So now, multilingual is not mandatory at ESA. No, multilingual is not mandatory. We have 2 working languages at ESA, English and French, and it is mandatory to be fluent in one and to have a working knowledge of the other. But in practice, it's English which is the working language. Wasim, do you consider taking graduate master's level with no work experience? That is what the Young Graduate Trainee Program is all about. It's for people who have no work experience or very limited work experience, and the idea is to give them that first experience. Christine, a specific grade level to achieve when graduating in order to be competitive for entry-level positions? I think you need to pass and you need to have a good grade level. I have to think it's been a long time since I was in the UK. What I think is really important is that it is relevant, that the studies that you have followed are relevant to the job that you're applying for. Rachel, do you hire biomedical scientists with PhDs at ESA? Yes, we do. We have some scientists working in human spaceflight and robotic exploration, and one of the things they do is to prepare the experiments for the astronauts. There's not many. We don't have many biomedical scientists working at ESA, but we do have a few. So I see that there are some questions in the Q&A, so I'll take those as well. What is the maximum age for a junior professional to join ESA? Well, we don't have a hard and fast maximum age for a junior professional. What we do have is a maximum of 3 years experience, 3 years working experience. And since it is intended to give people that experience, because a permanent job at ESA tends to need, we start at probably around 6 years of experience. The idea is to fill the gap between the 3 and then bringing them up to the 6. So, I mean, there is an age, generally speaking, roughly linked to this sort of, to this place in the career of, in your career. So I would say that that's what we would be looking at, but there is not a ceiling per se. Shami, you're interested in space. Do Indians need special clearance? As I said, you need to have the nationality of one of ESA's member states in order to be able to work for ESA. Now, we have nationals of other countries who work for ESA in a contractor role. In some cases, special clearance is needed. There is a famous law passed by the US called the ITAR law, and the ITAR is linked to who has access to rocket and missile technology. And of course, our rockets are launchers, they are missiles, they're based on that technology. So in some cases, special clearance is needed for jobs. But for those who are permanently employed by ESA, no, we carry out a basic screening, a basic security screening. And if that's met, then we recruit them. But if you would be looking at a contractor job, not a job with ESA, if you have Indian nationality. Tom Burles, nutrition and dietetics. Yes, that's a very good question. Do we have opportunities available to clinical dietitians, nutritionists, and food scientists? To be honest, I can't answer that question. I'm not sure we do. I'm sure that this would play a role, especially in the astronaut center, because they would need to know what is good for astronauts and what should they eat. But we do outsource some of these activities. So there might be outsourced clinical dietitian nutritionist roles. I'm not aware of anything actually on the ESA workforce. And Rosie, is speaking only English a disadvantage in the young graduate selection process? Well, actually, it's an advantage in many ways. Obviously, we look at the multicultural attitude of people, and language is a very concrete way to determine how much somebody has been exposed to other cultures, but it's not a requirement. And as I said, we also offer language courses if you come on board. So I see a few more questions have come in the chat. So Vito, Master Environmental Science, that would be our Earth observation programs. So there's a lot of work that we do in Earth observation. Wasim, Masters in Aeronautical Engineering. I would say yes. Aeronautical engineering is very broad. The young graduate positions tend to be a little bit more specialized. Not all of them. We have systems engineering, which is quite broad. But, you might find something in structures or in mechanisms, or it all depends on your specialization. But I would say, do you have a chance? Yes, definitely. What will it be? That is open to what's available. And then Harrison, no jobs available in additive manufacturing. Actually, we do have jobs available in additive manufacturing. It's more of an overseeing role if you are an ESA staff member, so a permanent ESA employee. For the young graduates, it's more keeping up to date with what's going on and helping the policymakers. But also there is hands-on stuff as well. I mean, we have one of the biggest test centers in the world, satellite test centers, so we can test satellites for vacuum, for extreme heat, for extreme cold, extreme noise for during launch, extreme vibration. So there are hands-on possibilities, and I know that we do have young graduates in additive layer manufacturing. I can't speak about the details, so I hope what I've said makes it sound interesting to you. But if I had a colleague here, a specialist in that domain, they'd be able to tell you more in detail. Charlie, do you need to have worked with ESA to apply for the astronaut program? No. 23,000 people applied to our last call for applications. We are approximately 3,000 people working for ESA, and I can tell you not all of them applied to become an astronaut. Some did, but not all. So I would say what is more relevant for an astronaut, I mean, ESA, of course, is a good plus point, but we actually want people to have had some exposure to extreme environments. You've got to imagine that if you're up in space and if something goes wrong, 1, you mustn't panic, 2, you must know what to do, and 3, if it really goes pear-shaped, you need to be able to get out of the space station in good order. And what I would say actually is the most important of all, you need to stay calm so that you don't actually jeopardize one of your other astronaut colleagues. And to give you a very concrete example, Luca Parmitano, our Italian astronaut, was out on a spacesuit when his helmet started to fill with water. There was an error in the spacesuit and it started to fill with water. You can imagine you're out on a space walk and your helmet is slowly filling with water. He did not panic. We managed to get him back inside. Everything was fine. We repaired the problem. And but I would say a lot was down to the cool, calm collectedness at that point. Kim, do graduates or professionals have to move between different countries in Europe during the programs? Generally not. Generally, if you come to ESA for an internship or a young graduate traineeship or a research fellowship, you will be located at one of our establishments where the specialization you are in is located. So as I said, for engineering and scientists, most people, the biggest chances are coming to the Netherlands. Now, for the young professional program, as part of this tailored training program that we offer to them, we are going to be offering them the opportunity to move between different countries and different departments. So, Esme, does ESA offer language opportunities for free if you're employed? Almost. They're heavily subsidized, but it does depend on the need for the language. If you come to the Netherlands and you want to learn Dutch, there's generally a strong personal reason behind that. So ESA subsidizes those types of language classes. However, if you absolutely need to learn French for your job, then yes, they're fully funded by ESA. Right, I am seeing things still coming in. Are there any more questions? I've been talking a lot, but I think I've covered most of them. Wasim, you might have to specify that because I'm not quite sure what your question is. An engineering graduate student legal work in the UK, can I apply? Are you talking about the fact that you have a residence and work permit for the UK? Is that correct? give you the opportunity to answer that. But maybe while you are typing, if my assumption is correct, you need to hold the citizenship of one of ESA's member states or associate members to apply for one of our programs. And you also need to be able to supply a copy of your passport to back this up. So if you do not hold the nationality, the residence or work permits don't count. It's the nationality which counts. Okay, so my assumption was correct. So I'm afraid that if you do not hold a nationality, if you do not have the passport of one of our member states, I'm afraid, yes, you can apply for our programs, but we will not be able to take your application any further. So we have 10 minutes before the end, and I'm wondering if anybody had any more questions.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation, really comprehensive. I think so many people got their questions answered, which I think there were so many questions as well. So hopefully you all got the information you needed. We do have a few more moments, so if you have extra questions, put them in the Q&A or the chat. But I just wondered in the meantime, while people are thinking about final questions, do you have any parting words of wisdom or like one thing that you'd want people to really take away if they're thinking about making an application?
Yes, I do actually, and I would just say go for it. Obviously, try and pick a job or role to apply for which is relevant, because that is important. But go for it. Don't deselect yourself. Believe in yourself and give it a try. I think that's the most important thing. And I see that Adriana has popped up. What are the specific roles that are done in the UK? We have our climate monitoring office in the UK, so there are people there with background in environmental sciences and also telecommunications and integrated applications. And there's some very specific research and technology going on there. But it is very small. There's 60 people based in the UK, so there will only be a couple of traineeships available there. The vast majority go to the European Space Research and Technology Centre in the Netherlands. And I can say that for a lot of people, I mean, there's a very, very active trainee and young professional community. They are working on their own satellite at the moment. It's called the YP-SAT, the Young Professional Satellites. So, and they have a very, very active social life. It was it was killed by COVID, but temporarily, thank goodness, but it's picking up again. And there are a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of interactions and things going on, which is really interesting. And the extracurricular activities are of huge benefit.
So I think that's all from the Q&A and the chat. I know someone was asking right at the beginning, and I know we have covered projects, like the kinds of projects that people get involved with quite a lot. I wonder if there's just any last examples or like sort of interesting things that you could tell us about that's going on at the moment, other things that the graduates are getting up to.
Yeah, I think some of the things that's very interesting is some of the testing hands-on work. So if you are if you're in antennas, for instance, if your study's in antennas, you'll get access to one of the, I would say, cutting edge antenna laboratories in the world. The same for the test center. Even if you're not going to be working in those domains, you still have the possibility to visit them. We try to organize visits to these labs and to the test center for our newcomers. We also have a concurrent design facility, which was the first of its kind. There's more organizations have them now. But whereas in the past, project management, in terms of the technical disciplines, people would work on their own little bit. So you can imagine the customer would say, I need this satellite to do X. The structures expert would say, we need to have this structure in order for it to do X and these instruments. Then the propulsion person would say, we need so much propellant to get it to where it needs to go and for its lifespan. The launchers expert would then say, yes, but the launcher can only carry so much weight. And this would be an iterative function where the inputs would go from one to another. Now, a concurrent design facility, they all sit together in the room and they do this in real time with software where they can, as they're having their discussions and as the new parameters come up, they can plug them into the software, and the other experts can then evaluate what is feasible and what is not feasible. So there's a lot of very interesting things going on at ESA, and where people would have access to. But a lot of it would also depend on the domain where they work.
Sounds great. Sounds very collaborative, sort of team working environment. So skills working together, I think, is maybe something to highlight on your application, or think about when you're applying. So where can you watch the recording? It will be sent out to you. So if you registered, you'll get an email afterwards, and with the links to the application page as well. So definitely bookmark those, and you'll be able to come back and rewatch this if you want all of those tips and pieces of advice again. But I think, if there are no more questions, we can just say thank you so much to Lucy for coming to speak to us and for giving us such an insight into the jobs available and the process and everything. And I think, as Lucy was saying, you've just got to kind of not deselect yourself. You've got to just go for it. And if you think that you are in the right place and if you have the right qualifications, definitely put in your application when the time is right. And thank you so much, Lucy. And thanks to everyone for coming. If you're coming back for more events this week, make sure to check back on the website to see what's going on. And other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day and week. And thank you so much again.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to me. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.